Hello and welcome to Cal APA 3 training module. My name is Ross Godfrey and I am the Director of Online Learning as well as Cal APA support for the ACSA Academy put on through Sacramento County Office of Education. Today I'll be walking you through Cal APA Cycle 3 training module, and so let us begin. So Cal APA Cycle 3, first of all, the submission due date is April 15th, 2021, and this is supporting teacher growth, which will be a observation of instruction, which includes a pre-meeting, a actual observation, and then post-meeting feedback and coaching. So again, April 15th, 2021 is the due date. Again, keeping with the format of Cal APA, this will be the cycle leadership framework. And so remember, we will investigate, plan, act, and reflect. And those are the cycles as we've done on the others. And keeping in mind that yes, we will have to do some video recording in this cycle. So some of the leadership behaviors that you should be aware of as we go through is to select a volunteer teacher for observation and pre and post conferences, preparation of pre-conference meeting, conduct a classroom observation, videotaping of observed lesson, that is for you to review with the person that you do observe, preparation of post-conference meeting where you actually give feedback and coaching, and then your final analysis of coaching. So some of the vocabulary are listed here. Again, I'm not going to go over all of it, but again, they're looking at evidence, practices, and then preparation. And again, you can look at the slide deck, which is provided you on Dr. Rose Weebly. A few others are process and pre-post conference. And again, you do have access to both the slide deck as well as the information on the Weebly. So I'm not going to go over the individual vocabulary words, but please be aware of what they're asking for in the process. So let's dig in a little bit. So Cal APA Cycle 2 is step 1, investigate. And so basically there's no tricks here. What you're really going to do is inquire and learn about the current teaching, coaching, observation, instructional feedback practice of the school and analyze these practices and identify a volunteer teacher and provide context for the coaching cycle. So like many of the other Cal APAs in Cycle 1, it's really getting down to the current state of how your school gives supervision of instruction, observes, and gives feedback. So remember, you're trying to be not critical, but you're trying to be very analytical of the current process your school uses. Please don't be brief. Make sure you're very detail orientated and keeping in mind also that different collective bargaining contracts say different things. And so ensure that you honor that and maybe even bring up the collective bargaining agreement says that teachers will be observed every so often, yada, yada. So please be aware of that. And then identifying a volunteer teacher and provide context for the coaching cycle. Again, you're going to have to talk with them, get some context, how many years they've been teaching, what they teach, and so forth. You should know this person fairly well anyhow. Hopefully they're somebody you are very familiar with, a friend, a colleague that you've had for a long time, maybe somebody who teaches a similar course, but obviously somebody that you have good rapport with. And so again, keeping in format, when you get into the Cal APA, you will go ahead and download the templates. And again, thinking about this, you're going to have to review your school profile, coaching practices, observation, evaluation practices, instructional guidance, and or support documents of that. So keep that in mind as you go. And then we will, excuse me for 1 second here. Then step 1, some of the checklist pieces that you need to be aware of is investigate part 1, current coaching and observation practice at the school. So again, familiarize yourself with current teaching, coaching observations, and instruction feedback practices at your school, and review established practices for classroom observation and evidence collection, including forms and or document associated with the process. This is where you probably need to talk about meeting with your principal or assistant principal, or even somebody in HR if you need to get the appropriate documents, at least a copy of those, because you will have to have those. And you need to be familiar with those as well for the sake of how you're going to actually answer the questions in part 1. So the other piece of the checklist is provide an overview of the process used at the school for coaching and or conducting classroom observations and pre-observation / post-observation meetings by responding to the following prompts. And again, these are, again, in the actual template. but be aware that it's easy sometimes where people will talk about the observation process, but where they fall down is they're really not being detail orientated on the actual coaching portion and or giving teachers instructional feedback. So please be aware that that is a big piece of this. And so again, these are the questions that are with that. And again, you have access to this slide deck in Dr. Rose Weebly. I'll give you a second to look that over. And then we will move forward. And keeping in step, I do want to give you guys the rubrics as we always do, and keeping in mind a level 3 on this is as follows. I do believe on Cal APA's always on the investigate part, there's no reason not to get full credit or at least a level 4. So please take your time, do a good job, be very analytical. If you have questions or you're not sure about something, please, as always, go ahead and give me a call and or email, and we can make sure that we get you on track. So again, let's take a look at the part 2 template of investigate. And so this is the volunteer teacher context. Again, when you look at the template, it will set you free. There are no real tricks in this part of the investigate stage other than answering the questions again thoroughly. Some key things that you should understand. You're going to have to identify, again, a volunteer teacher who will participate in the coaching cycle and allow you to do a classroom observation. This should be a teacher who's well-versed and actually will kind of help you out and be very willing to be flexible with you and be recorded as well. You're going to provide background information regarding the volunteer teacher and how the existing coaching and observation and or instructional feedback practices at the school will shape your plans for conducting a coaching cycle. So if there's certain things, instructional foci, whatever you're working on, please be very aware of that. And that might be something you might want to talk about as you go through to concentrate on that. I will mention throughout that you're going to talk about the CSTPs. The CSTPs are the professional standards for teaching. And it's really important that you download those from the state website. So if you go to CDE website and you can download the CSTPs, because you're going to have to pick a few of those CSTP standards in order to give feedback. And then finally, you're going to verify permissions for the teacher and or students to video record conversations in the classroom, keeping in mind your district and or school might have a strict policy on video recording. Keeping in mind you will not turn in a video recording of the actual lesson, but since you are still recording that lesson and going over it with the teacher, you may still need permissions. Most of the time this isn't a problem, it's a bit of a formality, but I want to ensure that you guys do not violate any school and or district rules or regulations, because this is about learning and it's not about anything else. And so we want to also be respectful and mindful of that. So again, important note, make sure you verify permissions. All right, moving forward to step 2, which is the plan phase. So here you're going to use the lens of coaching and instructional feedback and the California standards for the teaching profession, which is the CSTP document I talked about earlier. And so you're going to have to plan, facilitate, and video record a pre-observation meeting with the identified volunteer teacher. So this is the pre-meeting. This must be recorded. So please make sure you do that. And remember, when you turn in recordings, record the whole meeting and you'll be able to turn in chunks of it. You won't be able to turn in non-linear editable pieces, but you can edit it into consecutive chunks when you do turn in your actual work. So with that, here's the template again. We're going to look at classroom context, lesson observation template. So again, you're going to go ahead and fill out these as you would, and remember that you're going to have to video record these. And when you get into the actual Pearson website, it'll give you a little bit more direction on what to do with that, as well as the manual. So let's go over the checklist. You're going to conduct and video record a pre-observation meeting to review learning goals and classroom context, including the teacher's perspective on that context. Identify the teacher's self-assessment of instructional needs and challenges, and then identify student learning needs and challenges, which is academic and affective, with the content area of the lesson to be observed. And here you have to really agree upon a coaching focus by selecting a specific CSTP and 1 or 2 of its elements. So again, I would say when you do this, be very mindful of the fact that the CSTPs might focus on some cultural aspects, but you don't want to focus on that. You want to focus on a pedagogical or actual instructional aspect of the CSTPs, and you have to pick 1 or 2 elements to give specific feedback on. So please be mindful of that and have them choose wisely when you have a pre-conference with them. You're going to agree on a coaching focus by selecting that specific CSTP and its elements. And so when you do that, you're going to have to actually talk about what that is and what it looks like. And then you're going to collect a copy of the lesson plan for the volunteer teacher for the observation, which you will submit later on in step 3. You can work on this with them. People will never know, but the important part is that they do have a strong lesson plan for this, knowing that you're going to be coming in and observing a specific pedagogical piece of the CSTPs. And then moving forward, so kind of your checklist for your evidence for your pre-observation meeting. Discuss the following topics in the pre-observation meeting: instructional components regarding the lesson that you will observe, including the learning environment, the anticipated learning goals and prior knowledge, instructional strategies, key learning activities for students, student assets and supports, or adaptations for English learners and students with identified learning needs. Number 2, specific CSTP and or 2 elements that have been collaboratively selected that will be the focus of the coaching discussions. So again, keep in mind, you look at the CSTPs, each of them have elements attached to them. And so you're gonna have to pick the actual CSTP as well as a couple elements and agree upon that and what data will be collected. The third one is plan protocol for observation or form used, including the time and duration of the observation and the CSTP focused evidence you will collect and share during the post-observation meeting. Pretty straightforward indeed. Additional information relevant to the coaching cycle that the volunteer teacher shares with you. It could be time of day, lesson, time of year, support, etc., as listed below. And again, you do have access to the slide deck as needed on the Weebly. All right, so looking again further on the checklist here, you're going to identify 2 video clips from the pre-observation meeting that demonstrate your coaching skills with the volunteer teacher based on the CSTP elements selected to focus the coaching style. So again, 2 video clips from the pre-observation. I would record the whole meeting, and then you're going to pick 2 specific clips. The exact times and everything else are stated in the actual Cal APA documents. And they have changed a little bit, so I want to make sure, double check, because I have video clip 1, 3 to 5, and video clip 2 up to 2 minutes, but I think they may have changed those, so be aware of that and follow all the directions that the state has given you. Each video clip should provide evidence of a different aspect of your coaching conversation with the volunteer teacher as indicated. So in the first clip, you should have the CSTP elements that you're going to prioritize for coaching cycle and volunteer teacher self-assessment of instructional needs, challenges based on the lesson plan that they intend to teach, student assets and needs, and classroom context. And then in the second video clip, you're going to review the observation process and what CSTP focused evidence you plan to collect, to share, and discuss in the post-observation meeting. So looking ahead again at the rubric, here's what level 3 looks like. And again, you can look at this in the actual slide deck, but keeping in mind here that this is how they're actually going to look at grading you for the score. Moving on to cycle 3, which is the ACT phase. So this is where you're going to conduct a classroom observation. You're going to collect evidence of teaching practices related to the identified CSTPs and student learning, and then analyze observation evidence, facilitate a post-observation meeting, video record and annotate your coaching practice during the post-observation meeting. As you guys are well aware of, as you did in Cal APA 2, there is annotation tools with this one as well, where you're actually going to have to annotate certain things in the actual post-observation meeting. So let's take a look at the checklist here. Following the pre-observation meeting with the volunteer teacher, conduct the CSTP focused classroom observation. Keep in mind, the classroom observation should minimally be about 20 minutes in length. Please record the entire lesson as you're going to have to review with the teacher. During the observation, using an observation tool, which could be provided by your district, right? Hopefully it's the one that they use, or one that you find is very effective. Collect evidence related to the CSTP elements agreed upon during the pre-observation meeting with the volunteer teacher, including student work, process product performance. That was the result of the lesson. Yes, you should keep those samples if there is a graphic organizer, a worksheet, any type of writing, anything else that the students are doing. You are going to want to collect student samples of work as well. So be mindful of that with the teacher. You may have to redact some names and or other things from that to keep students' names out of it, but you will have to have some feedback that will include student work in there. And you're going to video record the teacher's instructions for the full duration of the observation. So in the coaching cycle, your analysis of the video recording will help you set the context for the post-observation meeting. So you're going to use this as a tool as how you're going to give feedback and coaching in the post-observation meeting. And again, the rubric here is as follows, pretty straightforward, but if there is any confusion or anything else, please go back to the slide deck and you can look at this as well. And keeping in mind, anything above level 3 is all of this plus to get your score. So kind of the step 3 checklist. After performing the classroom observation, analyze the volunteer teacher's performance using and citing the following things: video recording of the observation, the evidence of practice in relation to the selected CSTP element, remember, or elements, probably 1 or 2, collected of an observation tool, and then student work samples that you collected during or at the end of the observation. And keeping in mind also, you must identify evidence of teacher strengths and areas for growth in teaching practices related to the agreed upon CSTP elements for the coaching cycle. So again, we're going to look at some strengths. I like to call those cans, right? We saw that the teacher can do this, and sometimes it's very beneficial for you to use a piece of evidence directly that shows cause and effect. In other words, I saw you call on a multitude of students during the class period I observed today, and as a result, students were able to answer questions and have equity of voice. So again, a cause and effect, or I call it can, meaning you saw the teacher was able to do it, they can make sure that they get that in there. So again, look at that. And then areas for growth might be put in the form of questions. I noticed that you did blank and blank, and so how do you typically, or what did you learn? An example of that might be, I noticed that today when you taught your lessons, students were in groups of 4. However, only 1 or 2 students did the majority of speaking. How do you typically go to try to get equity of voice so all can participate? That might be a great question to ask, just an example, if you will. So kind of moving on to the next part of the checklist. Share the video of the lesson with a volunteer teacher and provide the opportunity for them to watch the recording prior to the post-observation. So allow them to take a look at that. Prepare for the post-observation meeting by developing guiding questions to promote professional learning for improved student learning and or well-being. And again, keeping in mind, you're looking at it from the lens of whatever CSTP they chose. So make sure that you come up with some questions, come up with some strength-based pieces, and come up with some questions you'd like to answer, or what I like to call wonderings. And it's always nice to tie those to evidence, right? I noticed this, and as a result, I'm wondering this. And then finally, you're going to suggest ways of improving instructional practice related to the agreed upon CSTP elements. So again, let me go back to the example. Today, when I was in your class, I noticed that you had students sitting in groups of 4. However, 1 or 2 students were doing the bulk of the talking. How do you typically ensure equity of voice when students are in collaborative learning time? And whatever they may say, you may come back and say, that's really nice. I am wondering if there's a way maybe you can get with a teacher next door who does a lot of collaborative learning, or maybe we could research some protocols that will allow you to ensure equity of voice. So again, that's just an example. I'm not saying you have to do it exactly that way, but that's the example that we might give. All right, again, the rubric here's the level 3, and keeping in mind 4 and 5 is all of level 3 plus. And so hopefully you do get a 4 or 5 on this. And again, please refer back to the Weebly where you do have access to this slide deck. All right, the step 3 act part, here's your checklist here, if you will. Conduct and video record the post-observation meeting with the volunteer teacher. The goal of the meeting is to foster a learning conversation with the teacher to improve instructional practice and student learning based on the CST element or elements that they chose. The meeting should demonstrate mutual respect for rapport with the teacher and responsiveness to the teacher while engaging in professional learning. So again, I modeled that a little bit before. If you have questions about that, obviously you can email or call me. So during the post-observation meeting, use the video recording of the volunteer teacher's performance and student work samples collected to provide CSTP focused feedback to the teacher regarding the observed teacher performance and student learning. Furthermore, in the checklist, coach the volunteer teacher. You must coach the volunteer teacher to identify strengths and an area for growth that are related to the agreed upon CSTPs. So again, keep that in mind, strengths and area for growth. Share with the teacher observation evidence and or student work to support your reflective questions related to the teacher's professional growth and instructional strategies used to improve student learning and or well-being. And then finally, watch the video of the lesson together during the post-observation meeting and discuss teaching practices related to the chosen CSTP element. You do not have to record yourself watching the recording. So just be mindful of that, please. But you do want to watch it together so you can they can reflect by looking and going through it as well. A lot of people send that video to the teacher and have them watch it prior to the lesson as well, or the feedback conference. All right, here's your checklist for the actual observation, the post-observation meeting. Remember, you're using collaborative approach, conduct two-way conversation with the teacher to provide coaching feedback and discuss the following: the teacher's own assessment of their instruction and assessment during the lesson and the relationship chosen to the CSTP elements. A lot of people like to say, so how do you feel the lesson went? I don't feel that that's the best way to go about it. I would review and say, you chose the following CSTP, and we do have some student work samples as well as some things that I wrote down here. As far as meeting the accomplishments of the CSTP, what are some areas of strength and what might be some areas you feel you might want to improve? Right, specific evidence from your observation, samples of student work products, as we talked about, effectiveness of teaching practices documented in the video recording, adaptations made during the lesson to support student learning needs. This might be scaffolds, this might be something for EL or special education students, and so forth. Maybe some missed opportunities for student learning, and again, we might ask some questions about that. And then what feedback was helpful to the teacher in coaching cycle and observation, and what was less helpful. So they're kind of evaluating you as you go. And then next steps, resources, and possible professional development activities to support the teacher growth. I know that's a lot, but again, this will get you in the right framework of that. And once again, here's our trusty friend, the rubric. And level 3 is stated above. And keep in mind 4 and 5 are all of level 3++. And finally, reflection. And I have to say, reflection is one of the areas where we're missing a lot of points, folks. I think it might be fatigue. Maybe you get to this final part and you guys are just tired and you want to be done with it, or you did it at the last second, or you hold off on the reflection piece. But I'm telling you, we need to do a much better job. So in the reflection piece, identify personal leadership competencies and needs in relation to instructional coaching, observation, collected CSTP related evidence, and support for teacher growth developed through the cycle, and then describe continuous improvement steps for the volunteer teacher. So again, here is the template. I'm not going to go over the individual questions because you'll have those, but keeping in mind that you are going to have to fill these out in their entirety. So let's talk about the checklist. After the conclusion of the post-observation meeting, you're going to solicit feedback from the volunteer teacher about key aspects of the coaching experience. So you should ask them, remember, because these are going to help you answer the questions in the reflect pace. The pre-observation, observation, and post-observation experiences with you. And again, you don't have to record this part, but you do want to make sure that you do have them answer these questions with you. So again, you want to talk about the experiences they had with you as giving them feedback and coaching, the quality and helpfulness of your coaching abilities, the impact of the CSTP related feedback on their teaching practice, and next steps for the teacher's own professional growth. So you have to ask these questions of the teacher if you're going to write an impactful reflection statement, which is asked for in part 4. Again, the rubric is as follows, and keep in mind also for 4 and 5, we've got plus and plus plus. So again, you have the rubric provided for you. The checklist, if you will, reflect on your learning and leadership development in cycle 3 by responding to the following prompts in terms of your leadership capacity to support teacher growth within the professional learning context of the school. Evaluate your strengths and areas for improvement for coaching and observing a teacher's practice in relation to the collected CSDPs based on the experience. What professional learning needs in relation to coaching a teacher to improve instruction and meet student needs have you identified for yourself, and explain why you think you should work on them. All right. Going on, reflect on your learning and leadership development in cycle 3 by responding to the following prompts in terms of your leadership capacity to support teacher growth within the context. And so reflect on and cite evidence of how effectively during the cycle of coaching and observation you maintained a high standard of professionalism, integrity, and equity during your coaching interactions with the volunteer teacher. How were you able to facilitate a two-way conversation that encouraged teacher voice and ownership of their strengths and areas for growth based on evidence of practice in relation to the CSTP? And then finally, reflect on your learning and leadership development in cycle 3 by responding to the prompts in terms of your leadership capacity. And so you see question 3, informed by a continuous improvement mindset and a focus on equitable leadership, what are your next steps to coach and support this teacher to improve instruction and meet student needs? So be ready to answer that question as well. Once again, our trusty friend, the rubric, and level 3 is stated there. Keeping in mind 4 and 5 is plus and plus plus. I am not going to go over the technical skills and knowledge piece for this because you do have those on your own. However, I do want you guys to make sure that you do read through these and go to the Pearson website and register as soon as possible. If for any reason you do need help or support, you know you can always email me and or call me. It's better to email me with any specific questions. And then if it's something I feel that I cannot help you with initially, you can always, I will always come back to you and say, hey, can we set up a time to Zoom or talk on the phone where we can actually get some clarification. So with that, this concludes the presentation. I hope it was informative. I'm sorry that the initial presentation recording failed. However, I feel this one will be helpful. And again, any questions, you know, you can reach me at my email and or by phone. I wish you all good luck with this. I know you will rock it. I will say that this is probably the most impactful of the 3 because giving teacher feedback is important to make you a strong instructional leader, and we owe it to our kids to ensure that. So I wish you the best, and thank you very much for your attention, and good luck on step 3.